Alright, so I watched an anime recently called Heavenly Delusion. Okay, I think it's great. It definitely should become a classic in the next few years. I honestly can't pick anything to complain about, even if I were to nitpick. However, as I talk about this, there is only one season, but manga goes further. Still, it is ongoing, which means that the story is by no means finished. In my opinion, though, the part where it ends is a good place to cut it. It's unfinished, very obviously, but a lot of very important things were revealed, and essentially the heroes go out into the sunset. Which, well, it's always a good way to cut a story. Even if there is more to tell. Alright, on that note, what is it about? Japan was hit by a catastrophe. The civilization as we know it is gone. Yet the people survive as best they can. Some scavenge, some rob others, and some are actually trying to rebuild the society. By any means necessary. And yet, if a total collapse worsened the climate and constant danger from fellow survivors and wild animals isn't enough, there is more. Mysterious man-eaters, creatures seemingly impervious to physical harm, stalk these lands too. And now, it's up to an unlikely duo of a boy who can kill these monsters with a single touch, and a girl who has issues. It's up to them to find heaven and save humanity. The setup is actually very complicated, especially since there are two completely separate stories being told at the same time. Makes it kinda difficult to put together for me, but it's slowly unraveled and explained, making a whole more sense as the time goes on. What did I enjoy? I'll list this in a row of praise. Is that a phrase? I think it makes sense. Whatever. So, first I very much enjoy the savist survivalist story here, in that the world isn't necessarily out to get the protagonist and hurt them in all sorts of ways. Instead, it's a more grounded take. For example, the Walking Dead world is filled with grim cutthroat monsters ready to stab each other at any opportunity. With the parallel being that it's the humans who are the Walking Dead, not the zombies, because of the horrible things they have to do. A lot of the post-apocalyptic stories are like that. Heavenly Delusion is different in what it does have the bad guys, but they aren't just horrible monsters. It just so happens that they do bad things because that's the way they manage to survive. And they aren't the only ones who are. There are actually nice people. There are people who don't just stab everyone they meet in the back. In fact, there's a total altruist the main duo meets at one point. Someone who is essentially just focused on one goal, and while pursuing it, a whole bunch of people settled around him. I've been vague on purpose to avoid spoilers. The gist is what the world isn't pure evil. And I like that. Very much. Second thing I very highly praise is the mystery, and I think being an anime does this story a bit of a disservice. So animation by its very nature is not exact. It's extremely difficult to draw photorealistic imagery, and obviously nobody animates that. Which means that a viewer of a cartoon has to have a certain suspension of disbelief, or maybe they need to fill in the blanks. It's difficult to phrase it the exact way, but I hope this explains my inability to see the obvious solution to the mystery which is shown all the way in the first episode. If one is to stop and think about it, looking at what they are told and shown, the answer is clear. And it's kinda the one which is the key to figuring out a whole bunch of different questions. Main one being the connection between the story in the school and the one Maru and Kiruka are going through. Boy, it's hard to avoid spoilers. I have to use such vague language. It's... oof. Yeah. I don't know if I'm selling it well, but trust me, it's good. It's really good. These are the two things I enjoyed the most. The rest are fairly equal. For example, the relationship between people. All things considered, nobody here is very unique or that interesting. Maru especially. He's a bland little dumb and just all around, But what he shares with Kiriko is unforgettable. The banter they have, the camaraderie, and this awkward situation where both of them constantly need to rescue each other, despite the fact that one of them is supposed to be a bodyguard. It's great. Well written, well animated, well everything. There's just so much right here. I don't know what else to praise in this relationship. It's like every single flaw and pitfall writers fall into, especially in manga and anime. None of it is here. Then there are also kids at the academy. With them, it's entirely different. Kids are kept in this tightly controlled environment. They are kept strictly inside, never told more than they needed, and every single aspect of their lives is observed and written down. so they are obviously stunted in many respects. Still, all of them differ in a whole bunch of ways. The beauty there is the awkward teen phase they go through in the middle of a story. This is spoilers, but I'll just say it anyway. They aren't told about love or sex or where babies come from, and so they don't understand what it is they are going through. Instead, they just feel something, and they understand that this person in front of them is important, but they don't grasp what does this mean or where is it supposed to be going. This is fascinating, weird, and extremely unsettling, as it makes me wonder if this sort of experiment is run somewhere in the world right now. Imagine the government black site, where these kids are grown and molded into whatever is needed, like perfect little soldiers or whatever. A whole army of Adam Jensens ready to start Deus Ex. Anyway, good stuff as well. I also enjoyed the combat. I guess I'll call it that. People love to use the word choreography, I can't even say it, but it sounds too pretentious to me. Wherever there is fighting, and there is not too much of it by the way, it's often against these monsters. As it turns out, mysterious monsters with crazy magical powers sized as big as cars aren't exactly easy to fight, so it's always this bizarre puzzle the protagonists have to go through. Even considering the fact that there is a goddamn laser gun, it's fascinating and chaotic. Especially when it turns out it's just animals and not man-eaters. That one time that was really funny. Animation pace, audio and music, just overall level of polish is something else I've got to praise. Difficult to put a finger on it, but it just feels more smooth and clean than a lot of anime nowadays. Oh hell, maybe more messy instead. There are plenty of ruins and damage in this, so I guess messy does fit a little better. So this is animated by Production IG. This is the animation studio which has decades of experience, and well, I gotta say, I miss seeing such high quality stuff from them. Felt like Studio Ghibli and Ghost in the Shell mashup. Obviously they are not Studio Ghibli, but they did work on Ghost in the Shell in the past. I also remember early episodes of Fena getting the same level of polish. Now if only the rest was this good. And lastly, I'll just mention comedy, which honestly makes no sense. This is not necessarily the darkest story, but the world is pretty grim. Yet there is still space for comedy and over-exaggerated reactions, all of which don't feel tone-deaf and lazy. This is extremely difficult thing to nail, but I'd say it very much is nailed, and another thing to praise. So, geez, I don't know what else to say here. I love the ending with all the reveals. I loved the second to last episode situation. I enjoyed basically everything about this. I do wish there was more, much more. Hell, at this point I wonder if the rest can even be this good, considering how many things were explained or at least hinted upon in a very clear way. I just don't think the rest of the story can deliver this level of polish and care. But I am naive, so here's hoping for more seasons, and here's hoping it's just as good. Right now, it's as solid a recommendation as I can give.